In this video, I'm going to answer your top screenplay formatting questions. How do you use VO, OC, and OS? How do you handle a character that is heard
I can't wait.
before they are seen?
Oh, that's my favorite.
How to format text messages, how to format phone conversations. We'll talk about camera angles and if you should ever use cut to. Learn these things and avoid common mistakes in screenplays, all with the help of Batman.
You wanted me. Here I am.
VO stands for voice over, and that's where the voice from one scene, whether we see that scene or not, is on top of a completely different scene.
I need to be honest and clear. I'm going to marry Harvey Dent. I love him, and I want to spend the rest of my life with him. When I told you that if Gotham no longer needed Batman, we could be together, I meant it. But now I'm sure the day won't come when you no longer need Batman.
To indicate that dialogue is voiceover, you would have in parentheses V period, O period, and that is above dialogue. That's called an extension. Now, OS and OC are basically the same thing. OS stands for off-screen or off-stage. OC stands for off-camera. OS is more commonly used in films. Now, this is where the character is in the scene, they're there, but the camera's just not aimed at them, or they're hiding behind something. In The Dark Knight, there's a scene where the Scarecrow is hidden in shadow and has a line before he steps out and we can see him.
Buyer beware. I told you my compound would take you places.
Then later, when we have Joker crashing the party, we get a single line of off-screen dialogue from Rachel.
Okay, stop.
In the screenplay, we have OS next to Rachel's dialogue. Now, what if you have a voiceover or an off-screen before that character is introduced in the whole screenplay or in the scene? Let's go back to that scene with the Scarecrow. We got the one line from him before he appeared.
Buyer beware.
We just have voice off-screen, his line, then we have the figure emerges, Scarecrow, wearing his mask. And that is useful if you need to have a surprise. You don't want the reader of the script to know who said that because it's a surprise. So you can use just woman's voice, man's voice, or voice. But it's also perfectly fine to use the character's name, even if in the beginning of the script you have a voiceover by a character who has not been introduced yet. If you have a character named Bat Stan, you could have Bat Stan talking in dialogue in voiceover and then introduce him later. But if Bat Stan is either really old or really young, you're going to need that indication so the reader will hear the right voice, because you don't want them reading the script for 2 pages imagining that Bat Stan is 30, and then all of a sudden we find out that Bat Stan is 6 years old. Now, how to format text messages. Here's a scene in The Dark Knight. Gordon's phone beeps. He looks at a text, : watch out. That works perfectly fine for a single text. What if you have a text conversation? Number 1, try not to.
No.
That's really boring to be able to use the big screen and you could put anything up there and we're just looking at a phone. But if you must, I've usually seen it formatted like this. Now, how do you format phone conversations? Here we have a conversation between Rachel and Harvey Dent. If we only saw Rachel and we did not hear Dent's voice,
Harvey, where are you? I'm where you should be.
then you would just have her dialogue and you could indicate some pauses where she's listening to the other end, either with ellipses or within parentheses listens or beat. Now, if we only saw Rachel but we heard Dent,
Harvey, where are you?
Where are you?
then Dent's dialogue would be voice over and it would be formatted like this. If we see both of them and go back and forth,
Bruce's penthouse is now the safest place in the city.
Then you go straight there. You don't tell anybody where you're going and I'll find you there.
I love you.
then you can use intercut. Here's how it's written in the screenplay. With the slug line and description for Rachel at the MCU, then it has intercut with Dent in an indistinct interior setting. Then we have their back and forth dialogue written without anything else, and we know we're going to cut back and forth. Now, usually you would not have an indistinct location. You would actually have a location. Later on, we find out Dent is in the basement. Normally, we would have the slug line and a little bit of description to set up the first person on the phone. Then we would have a slug line and a little bit of description to set up the second person on the phone, get the first thing they say, and then use intercut. You can have intercut Rachel Dent, or intercut basement MCU, or just intercut phone conversation. And after that, you just write their dialogue, and we know because of intercut, we're going back and forth. Now let's talk about camera angles. These are things like angle on, wide shot, medium shot, close up, pan, tilt. Some people will say you should never use camera angles. I'm not gonna say that.
Did you mean it?
Because every once in a while, it gets the job done when you have a unique circumstance. Let's take that previous phone conversation in The Dark Knight that we just looked at. We didn't know where Dent was. So later in the phone conversation, we have wider shows us we are, interior basement, condemned building, continuous. It's quick and it's easy and it gets the job done, even though it's indicating a wider shot.
Beautiful, isn't it?
The Dark Knight is very lean on anything that could be considered a camera angle. It more uses evocative language to convey what's on screen without being overt and talking about the camera. Let's look at the opening sequence. In the script, this is written as burning, massive flames, a dark shape emerges, the bat symbol, growing, filling the screen with blackness. We don't get anything like push in on, no overt camera angles. Let's look at the next sequence. Daylight, moving over the towers of downtown Gotham, closing in on an office building, on a large window, which shatters to reveal. Instead of saying the camera is moving, it uses ellipses to give us the continuous motion, describing one thing, ... giving us another thing. Now let's look at a sequence in The Dark Knight where Harvey Dent and Rachel are tied to gas barrels and Batman rushes to save them. There are shots of Dent, Rachel, Batman, and close-ups of the counter connected to a bomb. Batman thinks he's going to the location where Rachel is to save her, but when he gets there, he finds Dent instead. Here's how it's described in the script. Batman stares at Dent. The Joker lied. The counter hits 5 seconds. Batman drags Dent out. Dent fights to stay. Now, the reason a lot of people say just don't use camera angles is it can make your script just look like a mess and make it really unfriendly to read.
What did you do?
Angle on, Batman stares at close-up, Dent, the Joker lied. Close-up, the counter hits 5 seconds. Medium shot, Batman drags Dent out. Pull back to reveal, Dent fights to stay. It's a mess and you don't need to indicate every single shot, you imply it. All of that was written in the same paragraph, and that's probably because this script is 141 pages long, and the writer is writing this for himself because he's directing it.
Type in your name.
So you might actually give each of your shots a separate line, because every time you change lines in your description lines, you're implying a new shot. So it could be written like this. But let's say this is part of some incredibly complex action sequence.
We wouldn't want to make things too easy now, would we?
And you're a little worried that the reader will get lost, and you want to really strongly indicate when the camera is moving to a different shot. You could use some slug-liney shot kind of things, and it could look like this. Batman enters the room, stares at Dent, tied to a chair. The Joker lied. The counter hits 5 seconds. Now that example's weird because that wasn't complex enough to justify that.
It wasn't.
But let's say you're doing something like a car chase scene and you have things going on all over the place on a street. You could do something like this. The Ferrari jumps the curb and flies down the sidewalk, pedestrians scrambling. Down the street, cops set up a roadblock. Up the street, 3 cop cars join the chase, lights flashing. But do not do that through an entire screenplay.
What are you doing?
That will be annoying and your script will be 300 pages long. But if you have an action sequence and you want to quickly indicate shots, that can help the reader understand what's going on. Now let's talk about cut to. You will hear some people tell you to never, ever, ever use it.
No, you don't understand.
I am not going to say that because sometimes cut to does the trick. It's useful when you are cutting between sections that maybe aren't really true locations, and so slug lines are odd. Let's go back to the beginning of The Dark Knight.
Him again.
We went from this, what location is this? Blue hell, space, what would be the slug line for this? I have no idea. And that cuts to This, where we're floating in the air above Gotham City. Again, that would be a weird slug line. The air above Gotham City or the sky looking down, it would be odd. So in the script, it's written like this. We have the first sequence in blue fire flame bat hell, and then just cut to, and then we're moving in on the building above Gotham City. I use it a lot when I go from a location to suddenly cutting to a close-up somewhere else.
Time to move in.
Because you want the reader of the script to have the same experience as the moviegoer. And if you had something like interior kitchen, the person's mind sees a kitchen. And then if you have a hand with a knife cutting a tomato, it's not the same experience as the person watching the movie who's just gonna go straight to the hand cutting the tomato. So let's look in The Dark Knight, this sequence.
We found his next target. He's put it in tomorrow's paper.
Now in the script, it doesn't have cut to. It just goes from one slug line to another slug line. But let's say in your script, you wanted to see that hand, but you did not want us to know where we were because maybe that would reveal something about the plot or who that character was, and it would ruin a surprise. So you want to keep it a mystery. You could format it like this. Batman looks, a campaign poster, re-elect Mayor Garcia. The mayor's image has a manic clown's grin and ha ha ha. Cut to a hand. Puts a single bullet in a clip, then loads a computer-controlled Gatling gun. Wider to reveal. Interior bat bunker day. Alfred stands behind the Gatling gun. The rifle whirs to life, dollying sideways, blasting bullets. You can have a cut to a close-up and then tell us where we are in the slug line that follows. I actually use that quite a bit. So not a whole bunch of cut tos throughout the whole script, but every once in a while you might want to use a cut to.
Thank you. You don't have to thank me.
I hope this video helped. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and consider becoming one of my beloved, amazing Patreons who are making all these videos possible. And I will talk to you later.